Full disclosure, news and commentary number 62. 62, 62, 62, 62.
So get up and get a haircut at Veronica's Corner Store.
I need a haircut. Look at this. Look at this nonsense. I'm probably gonna get one
Kelly.
by the end of the week. Yes. By the way, happy birthday to this one. This one is now 9 years old.
Can you believe it? I have when I'm on video, I have the personality and consciousness of a 6-year-old. So I don't think you know that.
Oh, nice, nice. Veronica was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and kind of marks the time right before I came to Florida. So it's been, oh my gosh, it's been a while. So, of course, thanks to our patrons, Brett, Brian, Dan. Dan, I got your message. I'm going to answer it, by the way. Reverend Dan, Derek, Jeffrey, Larry, not that one, but...
The other one?
Right. Proc the Croc, Rob Rod, Southern Honor, Double Drop Kick. Special thanks to Eric, the World Walker, Viral Pro, and the OG. Do you know who the OG is?
D-O-Z.
Myron. Myron. He's the first guy to ever donate to Patreon. And, of course, people continue to join and people continue to ask. Absolutely. Patreon, Stephen Platinum, links down below. You can certainly do it that way. You can certainly send me money any which way. It looks like I'm going to be able to go back to work next week, Tuesday. How much money I'm going to be able to make, because what I do for a living is it's very up in the air. So we'll see, but that's exciting. Of course, if I look a little tired, it's because I'm figuring out how to get on top of stuff as far as rent and all the rest of it. You know how it is. I'm sure you do.
I'm a kid and I know how it is.
Bro, for real.
Seriously, I kind of do.
Ooh, unboxing.
Ooh, unboxing.
I don't know what this madness is.
Birthday present that isn't to me. Woohoo!
You can see where it's from. Where is this sent from?
Germany.
Germany.
Ooh, we're getting, whoa, just like the
What does
Korean
that
candy.
mean? Who's sending me this? Upsender. All media from Adam Richtstrop. I don't.
Cool.
We're gonna open this back up.
Cool Sam. So first we need to test it for glitter bombs.
Have you tested?
Okay, it's good.
It's good.
Feels like a book.
Feels like a book indeed.
It is a book. It's a magazine.
No, it's a certificate by the authority of the Noble Society Services. What is this nonsense?
Just keep talking. I'm just gonna play this.
No idea. German nobility title.
You can't see my face yet.
Hysterical. I am not German. But, and it's to Stephen Platinum, which is even crazier.
Yeah, because his real last name is, I'm not going to tell you.
So I guess it's some kind of nobility title for Stephen Platinum. Very cool. Very weird. What is my German nobility title? I'm excited. I will explore this more and probably... Weird. My account? This is what it looks like. Count Stephen Platinum. I'll take it. I'll always
Count
take
Steve.
I'll take a gimmick change. It's cool.
Dad, are you a vampire? Yeah!
Oh, am I a vampire?
Yes, he is.
That would be dope. I would save
I'm an
some.
energy vampire.
I would save some. You are an energy. You are an energy
Instead
vampire.
of just sucking up the blood and doing it indirectly, I like to go fast in my life.
Cool. We got some wrestling news to talk about. Shush for just a moment, please. Renegade Championship Wrestling had a show on May 30th and on June 6th, I believe, and they did well. meaning they were limited to a capacity of 50, I believe, and they hit those marks twice. Great to have wrestling back. Pro South announced that they're going to, even under the auspices of the Alabama Athletic Commission, they are going to be the first that are going to be legally allowed to run in that state starting on June 19th. Southern Violence, of course, is the big story. They ran on June 6th, and the report is up on gwhnewsandnotes.blogspot.com. Larry Goodman was there, which was great to see. And oh my goodness, we got to get to Stephen Platinum's Simp of the Week. Hit it.
Stephen Platinum's Simp of the Week.
Yeah. Platinum Simp of the Week.
Yeah.
The Simp of the Week goes to Paul Lee's AWF from Ringgold, who apparently ran a show as well. But it was so unimportant that nobody covered it, nobody cared, and barely anybody heard about it. So I'm sure I'll hear about it at some point, how many people that they had and that kind of thing. But the fact that they were running a show and nobody seemed to care, either to get outraged about it or to be happy about it, it just flew completely under the radar, which is a failure of promotion and just how much people really don't care about Paulie and the AWF.
No one cares about
So that is Stephen Platinum's Simp of the Week. Goes to Paulie and the AWF.
Stephen Platinum's Simp of the Week.
Gotta put those sound cues in later. This week, well, on Sunday, it was when I was on James Caleb Kitchen's podcast, I guess you'd call it. Though you could see our shining, beautiful faces as well, where we talked about Dark Side of the Ring, specifically about Herb Abrams and the UWF. So that went down. And then I was on Gunnar Miller's show, Chat with Gunnar. Look at this sharp looking. Look at you.
Whoa, dude.
How you gonna dress better than me? That hurts my feelings. We're going to the library soon. The libraries have opened up. So I thought it'd be good for the kids to stock up. They are not in school anymore. By the way, our commentary, which is going to come really soon, I'm going to dig deep. I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to talk about all of the big stuff floating around.
And I'm going to leave.
And you're going to leave because, yeah, there's a good chance I'm going to talk about really grown-up stuff. That's one reason. And then I'm probably going to swear a bunch of times. Because I'm going to talk about COVID. I'm going to talk about Black Lives Matter. I'm going to talk about
a lot of stuff.
Wrestling in Georgia and beyond.
And a lot of other stuff.
So I was on Chat with Gunnar. And apparently 12,000 people have watched that thing, downloaded it, and whatnot. It's awesome. A lot of people noted that it was a really different look for Gunnar. And that was my intention, if I'm being honest. I think Gunnar's one of these guys that's gotten a raw deal. I think he's a really great guy. And I wanted to kind of help showcase the guy that he is by not talking about the usual stuff that he would talk about on his show. I'm a fan of his show. I've watched it many times. And I just wanted to sort of have a different kind of conversation with him for the first time that I was on the show. And I think we definitely did that. Probably found out things about each other. And other people got to find out things about the two of us that they did not know before. So that was really exciting. All right, we got to jump into this commentary, and you probably heard me do a heavy sigh because of the things that I'm talking about. I'm scared to say the wrong thing. I'll just be full disclosure, right? Scared to say the wrong thing, but I'm going to put this microphone right here to make sure I capture all of this. All right, and I took, for me, extensive notes and bullet points, which I normally don't do, but I want to make sure I'm hitting a lot of the marks. And this is going to be me talking about digging deep and being honest. And it's going to apply to wrestling, which now seems like it's well on the path to opening up in a big way. And Southern violence is taking credit for a lot of that. And let's be honest, they should. And let's go. I shouldn't need to do a disclaimer on this, but I'm going to anyway. These are my opinions and these are my thoughts. However, I don't think that diminishes what I'm going to say. I think what it allows by me saying that, it's less about protecting myself and more about protecting the listener. Because there are people who are going to hear things that I say, and their first response is going to be to disavow them out of hand. I can't make somebody be open-minded. I can't make people listen to something and then listen to the part where I connect things up at the end. I can't make you do that. I will say that if your initial response, and believe me, almost everybody I know is going to, their first response to something I say is going to be incredibly negative, which should tell you that I'm being honest and I'm being nuanced and I'm probably going to go fundamentally at something that you currently believe. And there's a reason I'm qualifying it as currently. Let's talk about COVID. Right? We've all been dealing with this shit since March, if not before. It's now June 8th. March, April, May, June. Right? It's been a long time. I'll just tell you my experience with it personally. There's the bad stuff. Right. The timing of it for me personally was incredibly bad. Financially, it's just a wreck. I haven't paid June's rent, and I haven't paid May's rent, and I was only able to make April's rent because of the stimulus. I've managed to make money in a number of different ways, and people have been kind and generous, and that has helped as well. But I can't get unemployment for reasons I'm not going to go into because it's unimportant. But it's been a struggle, and it's been horrible. The additional time I got to spend with my kids has been amazing. That part's great. So usually I have the kids for a week, and then my ex has the kids for a week. And we've been really good about that. The kids, strangely, thrived in the environment, and I think it's because, strangely, they got to go from place to place, week to week. So they get to have very different experiences. They never doubted for a minute they were loved. They're not annoying, and that helps a lot. Both of my kids are really great. I can hear Veronica listening because she just giggled. It's okay if you listen from over there. That's fine. And it's been a joy. They handled their school stuff incredibly well. So I won the lottery there. I won the lottery by having great kids. But there was bad stuff too. But let's talk about COVID. It was, and it is, a thing. I think the people, and this goes for people in wrestling and otherwise, who now want to retroactively say that there are large aspects of this disease that were faked, it's distressing. It's not surprising, however. This is what people do. It was and it is a thing. It sucked to stay indoors. And things are changing now, not just because of the protests related to George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, which I'm going to get into later on, but because people just reached an exhaustion point, and the economy reached an exhaustion point. And when people were stuck indoors, but connected via social media, which was in some ways the worst way that we could have maintained contact with one another. That's what happened. We reached an exhaustion point politically, socially, economically. That's why things are opening up. Lots of people had it. Lots of people still have it. I don't know those numbers. And the truth is, I'm not sure anybody really knows those numbers. They don't. That's a generality that I can make that I think is really accurate. Lots of people had it. Lots of people have it. And lots of people, because we've opened things up. Now, we can talk about letter of the law, and different parts of the country are handling things differently. My mother, who's near the Washington, D.C. area, hasn't been able to have contact with anybody for months, as far as like face-to-face contact. And it sucks because she's very old. And this isn't a great time for her to not have contact with people. My sister Linda and I do our best to communicate with her constantly. My sister FaceTimes her. I call her, especially when I've got the girls. And that blows, right? And people around where she lives have had it. And she is in that sort of demographic of, if her or the friends or the people that she lives around get it, it's bad news, right? We're in phase 1/phase 2 here in Florida, but let's be honest. As these things open up, especially in the South, it's not because goals were hit as far as numbers. It's just we want things open now. It's okay to acknowledge that. Whatever the legal ramifications are, or whatever you need to hold on to sleep at night, let's face it. Let's just have an honest conversation here. It's not a conversation because people don't get to talk back, but let me be honest, right? We're opening up because we simply don't want to be closed anymore. And it really has nothing to do with numbers. Both sides of this politically are less interested in what the numbers really are and more interested in the numbers that suit them or ignoring them when they don't. And both sides do this. So let's just be honest with ourselves. We've reached an exhaustion point. And the fact that more people will get it and more people will die as a result is less of an important thing for most people than it was before. Because of exhaustion, because of the economy, and because on a personal level, people just are tired of living that way. That's the truth. What we saw was the need for people to demonize others, which is what happens when you don't feel right about something. And again, nobody got out of this COVID thing happy on some way, shape, or form. Of course, there's the incredibly mega wealthy that managed to make more money out of this whole thing. But what I saw from people that I knew was at best a malaise of this sucks. At worst, an up and down panic, or people going through stages of grief, or the need to demonize, right? For one side to say that the other side was being selfish by not wearing masks, by not caring enough, by creating this sort of false information in order to make themselves feel better. Those people are selfish, and then those people who are labeled selfish love to label the other side as scared or misinformed. These are just observations that I'm making right now. Personally, what I found really disconcerting, especially amongst wrestling people in Georgia, which is where I focused, and I have a lot of those people on my feed, and I would read things. It was disturbing to see a lack of nuance, meaning people not acknowledging subtle truths in favor of big, bold, stupid statements. Right? you care about the economy and you don't care if people die. We're going to kill grandma in order to keep the economy going. To this is all a conspiracy to take down Donald Trump, or the Democrats are thrilled with this, or the incredible lack of nuance was really troubling. And then people who didn't really care. This is wrestling people, but I'm going to get to that at the end. So, lack of nuance, a lack of honesty, a lack of analysis, and this is across the board when it came to COVID. A lack of understanding and empathy. And this need, and this pervades through everything with Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, All Lives Matter, wrestling. People have come to this mistaken conclusion that being inflexible is being strong and right. Whatever I think about people's political beliefs, this sort of rash of, if you think blank, 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 unfriend me. Or people who I consider to be leaders and intelligent saying things like, nobody can change my mind on this no matter what. I wouldn't, if that was a teacher of one of my kids who took the position of, nobody can change my mind on blank no matter what. Absolutists of every political stripe. Now, you might be thinking, well, what? Even people who say I hate racists? Folks, there's the incredibly obvious. But there are so few things that are incredibly obvious. And why people can't acknowledge that is beyond me. Why people feel the need to take on a flippant attitude about serious matters without couching them is beyond me. Why people, in the midst of all of this, are getting their knickers in a twist about Elmer Fudd not being able to have a shotgun on children's programming. Again, it's just symptomatic that people are just fed up. And people are looking for reasons to be mad. But that doesn't take away from the fact that there are legitimate reasons to be mad. Legitimate things to take into account. George Floyd. Take out the unabashed racists, because it's not even worth discussing them. Right? If you're with a group of white dudes taking a picture with saying mud people and stuff like that, that they're not even worth addressing. They're garbage human beings. They're the worst of the worst. And on the far end of the other one, people who would advocate for like slaughtering people in the streets under any capacity for any reason, like, we're not talking to you. We're talking to us. Okay? The people who are on the spectrum of what I would consider human beings, right? The people who are up for dehumanizing others, I have no patience for. I am not talking to them. I think it's a horrific situation, George Floyd, that was exacerbated and compounded with a combination of everything. Everybody's response to COVID and the life changes that had to occur, right? Years of racist bullshit, which a lot of people understood on one level, but didn't understand the depth. And now I think a lot of people are beginning to see the depth and respond appropriately. It's actually encouraging to see the number of people who have been like, I finally get it. And these are mostly white people, right? I finally get that it's a different level than I thought about, or it's more pervasive, or it's more institutionally based than I realized or acknowledged before. That's great. There's actual changes that are occurring that seem to be permanent or semi-permanent. And that's encouraging. Because it didn't matter how many kids we shot in a school, nothing changed there. Not in terms of laws or protections or even people gaining subtlety or nuance in their way of thinking, which is horrific. People didn't take to the streets for kids getting shot down by and large. It's good that they're taking to the streets now. Here's some things that are, this is me digging deep and being honest. Violence in these protests was inevitable, both by the police, who were in the midst of having their power reduced and questioned for the first time in a long time, and on this level, maybe ever in the United States, and through protesters, some of whom have taken the opportunity to riot, who are less interested in the cause and more interested in themselves, and also people who were so unbelievably angry that this was a steam valve that opened, and people who followed along with the crowd once the steam valve opened over here and people started doing violent things and destructive things, joined in, because that's the nature of a mob. That often a lot of people move with the strongest impulse happening. And now we are seeing things level out more. Change, as a general thing, is terrifying. To groups of people, it is even more terrifying. And this goes for both sides. Wrestling. Is it safe to open up wrestling shows? Especially in places like bigger cities where the disease is more prevalent. It stands to reason, does it not? Probably not. Let's be real. People are going to gather, and people are going to get sick as a result. Does that mean we should not run? It doesn't really matter what I think. The professors of wrestling asked me to make a statement. I guess this is the closest thing that I'm going to make to one. But we are exhausted. And the simple fact is, people go like, what about your, survival, like your instinct for self-preservation overrides everything, but it doesn't. Not when things are nuanced, and not when things are, people make decisions that put themselves and others in peril all the time. And sometimes it just reaches a point where people are willing to accept that danger, even for their loved ones, even for their parents or grandparents, even for their kids. And that's not a pretty thing to say, but it is the truth. And wrestling is opening up more and more and more. Is it following the guidelines in Florida of a phase 1, phase 2 thing? Not at all. Cases do go up, and they are continuing to go up. I'm just stating facts. But things are going to open up. Like Universal is already taking people under strict whatever, right? Masks, whatever. But I said this on here before, there are letter of the law, rule stuff, and then there's social mores. And where I'm sitting, and from what I'm seeing, the social more is we're moving towards everybody wants things open. And in the protests, it's superseding people's concern about COVID because it's much hotter, it's much more emotional, it feels much more immediate, it feels much more important. And COVID has reached the point, whatever the numbers are doing is less important than how people feel COVID is in priority and importance, which is here. This isn't me making a judgment. This is me just telling you what's going on. Social mores wise, wrestling shows are going to open up more and more and more and more, and faster and faster and faster and faster and more frequently. And even Alabama Athletic Commission, which in theory will have the strictest rules of all, Pro South is finding a way. And if Pro South has found a way, other places will as well. I'm not here to tell you whether that's good or bad. I'm not here to tell you whether that's right or wrong. I'm just saying it is. But the reasons it's happening, just go in with your eyes open and truth in your brain. And the reason is because we simply want it to happen. Not because it's 100% safe. Not because it fits some kind of standard that was set almost arbitrarily. Bringing back George Floyd, Black Lives Matter. Be careful, wrestlers and wrestling people who are taking absolutist positions, even for the people who are, for the most part, on the side of right. Right? Institutional changes need to be made, and they are being made. However, for all of the outing that's gone on, as far as this promoter's racist, this wrestler's racist, this wrestling person's racist, right now what we're seeing is the low-hanging fruit and the easy calls to make. And they should be made, and they are being made, and that's great. But it's also not really affecting people's bookings. As much as people are declaring, I would never, but you probably weren't wrestling there anyway, and more wrestling shows are opening up, and more people are going to be able to do things in a variety of places. But things have been revealed, good and bad, about every promoter in Georgia wrestling. And these absolutist positions and these hardcore angry declarations are going to look awfully silly when you're having to do all kinds of social gymnastics to justify working for this person or that person. But just know that I understand, and I think other people will allow it as well. These are volatile times because of COVID, because of George Floyd. They are unprecedented times in the United States in many ways. And people have made huge choices in things that they have declared and said and taken absolutist positions that are impossible to maintain. And I have to, for myself, acknowledge the fact that, you know what, people said things and they don't ultimately mean them 100%. And the more that they declare that they mean them 100% and won't bend and won't change, the more likely it is that they will. And while a lot of that should be held accountable, because I hate a hypocrite and I hate a liar, I will also acknowledge the nuance and subtlety of a lot of it's for appearance. A lot of it is born out of emotion and anger and rage. And a lot of it is simply people who are dealing with fears that they have. Fears of finance, fears of providing for their families, fear of providing for themselves, fear that, and some of these fears I can't fully understand because I don't experience them. Fear of When I see the blue lights in my rearview mirror, I get scared. The juvenile delinquent in me gets scared, but I don't fear for my life. But there are people that do. And the truth is, a lot of systems need to be changed. But the truth is also that a lot of the people who we put in positions of authority in Georgia wrestling have proven so far to be unworthy of it because they're too absolutist, they're too dumb, or they have a genuine lack of empathy in certain areas when they should have more. But that's not to say it needs to be that way permanently. People can change. And they should. If you were looking to me to give these sort of absolute statements of what needs to happen and what needs to happen, I can't tell you what should happen. I can only tell you what's going to, because that's a better way to prepare. Wrestling shows are opening up. How people choose to deal with those things, I hope, are couched with empathy, understanding, and keep your tongue in your mouth for just a bit, please. Empathy, understanding, and the reality that you don't know. None of you know. None of you know what's best. And so we're going to have to figure this out together. But it would go a long way if people would have less arrogance, less absolutism, more flexibility in handling information as it comes in. If you've learned nothing else through 2020, that's a great lesson that I think almost everybody needed to learn, including myself. You don't know everything. And that emotion sometimes stems from a place that is very good and very real and needs to be acknowledged, and sometimes stems from a place of fear exclusively. When these shows open up, there are going to be wrestlers that do not feel comfortable wrestling. They are not to be mocked. There are wrestlers that are going to be awfully blithe about everything. And I think to an extent they are to be mocked. I think a little bit of humility will go a long way. A little bit of acknowledging that you don't know. And a little bit of precaution and safety is in order. Not just because of the practicality of let's try to stop this thing from spreading, but for the simple acknowledgement of when I go out and I see somebody that has a mask, what that tells me is we're acknowledging that there's a certain social order that we're all moving around in. Remember Kohlberg's morality pyramid. And the acknowledgement that we have a social contract and we can do bare minimum things to help one another and protect one another. It's a very real thing. Of course, take care of yourself. Of course, continue to do the things that you feel like you need to do and really should do. And when in doubt, pause for a moment and try to dig into the deeper meaning of what people are saying without immediately assuming the worst. And don't be afraid to change. These are good life lessons, regardless of wrestling. But wrestling in Georgia, be able to acknowledge the things that are true and also read and feel the winds. It's invaluable as a performer, as a promoter, as a booker, but really as a person. Seeing things as they are and understanding the nature of things, the true nature of things, including yourself. It's what we're here for. Right, kid?
Uh-huh. I'm also here to stare at the light on the fan.
And stare at the light at the fan, kid. All right, we're going to go to the library.
Goodbye.
Do yourself a favor and find a way to really educate yourself today. And if you've cited bogus sources in the past of information, if you've pulled information from places that are bogus, acknowledge the fact that that happened to yourself, if not publicly. And for God's sakes, change your way of thinking. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to the society at large. And you owe it to your kids if you've got them.
Stranglehold.
I'm Stephen your friend in wrestling.
And I'm secretly a unicorn tank, because that's a cross between a squid and a unicorn, because it's like a unicorn, only a sea creature. Okay, bye.
And this has been